Hello and welcome to the US-India Business Council's India Ideas Summit, our 45th annual meeting. Given that it's our 45th anniversary, we had hoped that we would be hosting you live at the beautiful Taj Palace Hotel in New Delhi, India. But, well, we're in the middle of a global pandemic and I'm coming to you live from my attic. While COVID-19 may have forced us to come to you virtually and convene together in this virtual format, we promise you an action-packed 2 days of thought-provoking conversations and insightful analysis from an impressive array of speakers. In light of the challenges that we're facing, the devastating impact of the pandemic, the economic disruption, and quite frankly, a world turned upside down, we have focused this year's summit on building a better future. Our panels, armchair discussions, and presenters will serve as a showcase for how the US and Indian companies are connecting our two countries and working to create a more sustainable and inclusive tomorrow. We will hear how businesses working with our respective governments are expanding the foundations of a strong and growing commercial relationship between the United States and India, creating jobs that help people in both countries fulfill their aspirations, and driving innovation to help us overcome the greatest challenges. More than ever, industry is playing a vital role in helping our communities overcome hardship and become more secure and more resilient. In response to the pandemic, companies are tackling the dramatic supply chain disruptions to ensure that our homes and our businesses have adequate supplies of food, medicine, and personal protective equipment. They're developing life-saving therapeutics and promising vaccine candidates. And they're working to maintain the integrity and resiliency of our financial and digital infrastructure. This year's summit highlights some of these efforts. We will kick off this morning with an inaugural armchair conversation between Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal and Congressman Ami Bera, the chairman of the House Subcommittee on South Asia. That will be moderated by Madhu Gopalan, the India head of Procter & Gamble. They will examine how the COVID-19 has changed our understanding of global supply chains, exposing risks and vulnerabilities, and creating new avenues for cooperation between the United States and India. We will then have an opportunity to hear from India's Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, on the plans to promote India's economic recovery. The minister and our board chair, Vijay Advani, the executive chairman of Nuveen, will then engage in a fireside chat to discuss the ways in which industry can enable and accelerate the recovery process. We will also dig deeper into the economic plans and policies in a roundtable with Secretary of Economic Affairs, Tarun Bajaj. And then we're going to shift gears with an exciting and inspiring array of speakers to look beyond the current challenges and explore how we build back better, how we're leveraging technology to drive productivity, how we're rethinking the ways in which we live, work, and travel, how we're looking at sustainability and building a more resilient infrastructure for tomorrow, and using innovation and collaboration not only to beat this pandemic, but prevent the next one. We will also be looking at how we can ensure that the Indo-Pacific continues to be a zone of peace and prosperity. And we will hear from the Minister of Transport, Highways, and MSME, Ms. Nitin Gadkari. But we don't want you to think that we're all work and no play. So to end day one, we have 3 very special sessions to celebrate the rich cultural connection between our two countries. In our virtual social hour, you will have the opportunity to escape with the fusion sitar compositions of Rishabh Rikaram Sharma, go on a culinary journey with food blogger and cookbook author Priya Krishna, along with 3 acclaimed chefs, or take that journey inward with Sister Shivani and explore mindfulness techniques that have been embraced by businesses in the US and India to help improve wellness and help employees cope with the stress of these times. Tomorrow, we will return with another remarkable group of speakers as US Chamber CEO Tom Donahue, Minister of External Affairs Jaishankar, Secretary Pompeo, our two excellent ambassadors, former ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley, and of course, the highlight of the summit, an address by His Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as well as the presentation of our Global Leadership Awards to two outstanding CEOs in our corporate community. But none of this exceptional summit programming would be possible without the support of our members, our Board of Advisors, and the India Advisory Council, and most particularly without the support of our generous event sponsors. We are grateful for the important financial contributions of our platinum sponsors, the Adani Group, American Tower, Nuveen, and Procter & Gamble. Our gold sponsors, Abbott, Amway, General Electric, HCL, Lennar, McClarty Associates, and Zoho. And finally, our silver sponsors, Aiken Gump, Bharat Forge, Covington & Burling, General Atomics Aeronautics, HSBC, Jet Synthesis, Microsoft, Shrey Infrastructure Finance, Taj Hotels, the Tata Group, TransUnion, Uber, Virgin Hyperloop, Walmart, and Western Digital. I also want to make sure to thank our partner organizations, Invest India, which is doing phenomenal work in the US-India corridor, and CNBC TV18, our media partner. But this year, we have also taken a particular focus on our state partners, because USIBC not only emphasizes the Washington to New Delhi corridor, but we are present with industry throughout the diverse cross-section of the United States and Indian cities and states. We're grateful to have a strong partner network for the 2020 IDEA Summit agenda with Colorado, South Carolina, Indiana, New Jersey, Utah, and Arkansas, with a special thanks to SIDO. Equally, we have been working with Indian states through our Destination India Investment Series and are proud to have state webinars with 8 states and many more to follow. I could go on and on about all the wonderful things that are happening, but I know you're excited to get this show on the road. So thank you for joining us, and let's begin.
Thank you, Nisha. Very good evening and good morning, and welcome to the inaugural keynote conversation on global supply chains and combating COVID-19. This is a topic of conversation in every capital in the world today and every boardroom in the world today. Companies are revisiting the just-in-time and lean manufacturing that has underpinned global supply chains so far in the context of the havoc COVID has wreaked. Governments, on the other hand, are looking at balancing safety of citizens first and foremost, and also supporting ramp up of economies and looking at new opportunities that the global supply chain realignments might offer. In this context, public-private partnerships become even more critical. Among many examples, one is the work P&G is doing in India, PG Suraksha India, collaborating with local governments on supporting health and safety of supply chain workers and helping governments and communities create a resilient supply chain, not just for India, but for global supply chains that are served out of India. Of course, in this context, the India-US relationship holds a very special place. There's been a lot of progress on this relationship over the last many years, but I'm sure all of us would agree that there is immense potential to do more. And there is probably a once-in-a-generation opportunity today as the world goes through this COVID crisis and goes through this global realignment of supply chains on how India and US can partner and collaborate for their mutual benefit. USIBC had recently published the Global Supply Chain Initiative. And as part of this initiative, there would be insights shared on strengths of supply chains in every major state in India, and also provide a platform for both the governments and industries on both sides to partner. To dialogue about this exciting topic, we're honored to be joined by our two distinguished panelists. I'd like to first start by introducing Honorable Minister Piyush Goyal ji, Minister of Commerce, Industry and Railways of Government of India. I've had the pleasure of meeting the Honorable Minister a few times, and we all know of the unique nature in which he serves the public good by being a catalyst of bringing together the best of government and industries. An example a lot of us are very familiar with is the Ujala initiative, where he orchestrated the transformation of sustainable LED lighting and made the government intervention a catalyst to our industry leapfrog and make this move as well. Sir, thank you for joining us and look forward to the conversation with you today. Our second eminent panelist today is Representative Bera. Representative Bera is the longest serving Indian American on the US Congress. Among his many accomplishments in public service, a very unique insight and worldview Representative Bera brings is the fact that he's a medical practitioner. He's been managing healthcare on the private sector side. He's also been managing healthcare on the public sector side. And this brings a very unique worldview to this conversation. And we're delighted, Representative Bera, that you could join us today. So let me kick off the dialogue and the conversation today. The first question to both our eminent panelists. And this question, of course, no surprise, is on the status of India-US trade as it pertains to the current global supply chain opportunities. As we said, there's been tremendous progress, but there is potential to do a lot more. USABC recently did a Destination India series, and both of you would be glad to know that there is immense interest in every single state that this virtual series was done in, where American companies had an opportunity to meet with state leaders to discuss opportunities for India to be part of global American supply chain programs. What do you think are the realistic near-term goals for this relationship as it pertains to the global supply chain realignment? And what could be some of the aspirational long-term goals? Let me start first with Honorable Minister Goyal ji.
Thank you, Mr. Gopalan. Thank you, Nisha, for setting the context of the USIBC India Ideas Summit. Compliments to you for the very interesting lineup that you put together for this two-day event. Warm welcome to you, Congressman Ami Bera. It's always a delight to meet you, to listen to you. I think COVID-19 can possibly keep us apart across the oceans and have to meet virtually, but our hearts are in the right place, and I am quite confident that we will continue to engage, we will continue to beat COVID-19 together and emerge victorious in the days to come. India and US are very natural partners. We are partners for mutual benefit. We work together for growth for decades due to our shared values, our mutual trust, the goodwill and robust engagement that citizens of both countries shared with each other. In fact, even during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw both countries almost on a daily basis having a dialogue on different subjects. When it came to the pharmaceutical requirements, the medical requirements of both countries, we worked together to meet the needs of citizens of both countries. We were very happy to be able to ensure unrestricted and unlimited supplies as much as required by the United States, whether it was hydroxychloroquine, whether it was the various paracetamol and its derivatives. We were happy to receive ventilators from the US. It's been a mutual relationship coming out of trust. And I think as trusted partners, both countries have a long future ahead of us to work together, to create more resilient supply chains, to plug in the gaps wherever each one of us finds different geographies which are not cooperating in our effort to create sustainable, well-meaning, rules-based and transparent economic activity between nations. I think the US and India are natural allies. Our leaders share great chemistry. Our people work with each other extremely well, and I'm sure we can jointly advance the prosperity in both countries. In the long term, I believe we have a quick trade deal which has some of the pending matters built up over the last couple of years, which we need to get out of the way quickly. We are almost there. I think another couple of calls and we should be able to sort that out. Post that, as was already intimated to the US Congress, the United States and India need to sit down on the negotiating table. I don't know if that can be done before the elections or post the elections, but we need to work towards a much more sustainable, a much more robust, a much more enduring partnership in the form of a free trade agreement to which India is willing to work with an open mind, with a willingness to open our hearts and our markets with a corresponding opportunity for Indian businesses in the US. We believe we should also look at an early harvest in the form of a preferential trade agreement so that we can, rather than waiting for the gains of a free trade agreement, which may take several years to conclude, we could look at an early harvest of maybe 50, maybe 100 products and services where we can engage with mutual trust and an open spirit so that the partnership between the US and India can kickstart much faster. We can build institutional cooperation between the two nations and increase the interaction between business, industry, and our people for mutual benefit, for mutual strategic cooperation. And I have no doubt in my mind that the US and India, the leaders and the people of both countries are looking forward to this close partnership between the two countries, which I believe is central to a free, open, inclusive, peaceful, and prosperous new world that I foresee post-COVID. I would like to invite US businesses and the US government and other stakeholders such as USIBC to partner us in our effort to work together towards a much more stable, robust, and resilient global order in the years ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for those opening remarks. Representative Vera.
Thank you, Mr. Gopalan and Nisha and USIBC for everything that you do in terms of bringing the two countries together. Mr. Goyal, I couldn't agree with you more. My last trip abroad in February was to India, and just 1 week ahead of President Trump's visit. And while we were hoping that we would get the beginning of a trade deal done, I don't think we are that far apart. And I couldn't agree with you more that let's take those steps forward. And I think the pandemic, COVID-19, presents a real unique opportunity for us to move this relationship forward. What the pandemic really has exposed is an over-reliance on a single source, in this case, China, for many of the raw ingredients, the PPE, the APIs for our pharmaceutical sector. And as we think about, the next 6 months, 12 months, how we defeat this virus, India has a very significant role in this. India has a very mature pharmaceutical sector. Our companies are already working very closely with India, a California company in my home state, Gilead and Remdesivir. There's a close partnership there. But more importantly, as we think about how we defeat this virus, it really is about getting a vaccine that's safe and effective, and not vaccinating one country, but vaccinating the entire planet. And this is a unique area where India has a mature vaccine manufacturing sector. They've been manufacturing and distributing vaccines for much of the world for quite some time. And this is a place where India can help the United States, but also can help the rest of the world. So I'm wildly optimistic about how we move forward here. And it's not just the United States and India. When you talk to the European Union, when you talk to like-minded allies in Australia, Japan, elsewhere, they see the vast potential of India as well. And I think the next 6-12 months, as we help our citizens get through this pandemic, help our economies get through this pandemic, can only bring us closer together if we're willing to work together. And if we do work together to build on the strengths of both countries, we will get through this faster. And we will help create a 21st century framework of countries that value democracy, that value human rights, that value free and open markets. And I see the opportunities as immense. And this is not something that's just starting right now. If you look at the past few decades, the trading relationship between the two countries has really been growing. And it's not just the US companies making investments in India. When you look at the number of Indian companies that are making investments here in the United States, the jobs that are creating, this is a bilateral relationship. Also, my parents immigrated from Gujarat in the 1950s, and we were a small diaspora when I was growing up. But when you look at the Indian American community here, it's now the wealthiest community in America, the most educated community in America. Increasingly, when I first got elected, I was the only Indian American member of Congress. We're now at 5 members of the House of Representatives and Senate, and you look at the number of candidates that are running, I think there's a real role that the Indian American diaspora can play in bringing the two countries closer together and bringing our two economies closer together. So, the sky's the limit. I think we will have a challenge in the next 6, 12, 24 months as we work through the pandemic, but if we're smart and strategic about this, I think we will come out on the back end closer as friends and partners, and we can set the framework for what the 21st century looks like. So again, I'm wildly optimistic, and I think there's a real silver lining here.
Thank you, Representative Bera. It's so good to hear the adjectives used by both of you. The minister talked about India and US as natural partners, and Representative Bera talked about the relationship having sky as its limit. On that note, I'd like to move this conversation forward with asking Minister Goyal. So you talked about a rules-based, transparent working environment for both countries and for India in general. And we know you've been a passionate advocate in terms of positioning India to benefit from this global supply chain realignment. And as you know, USIBC recently released a white paper on the steps that India can take in terms of positioning itself in this time. So we would like to hear from you what specific steps are being taken by the Indian government to position India to benefit from this global supply chain realignment that's happening.
Well, I think every investor in the long run is looking for very few but very credible commitments when he's looking to engage with other countries. He's looking for a stable and predictable policy environment. He's looking for fair play. wants to make sure that he won't be discriminated against, will not be left holding the can without a court of appeal. I think everybody wants to have an easy way of doing business, so you're not going through the maze of bureaucracy and through the rule book on every single thing. You're looking at better infrastructure in terms of logistics, in terms of utilities, in terms of common facilities that businesses, particularly manufacturers, require. By and large, industry and business wants to be left alone, wants to be given freedom to operate, and is willing to commit itself to work within the framework of a country's laws, work within the letter and spirit of the law that each country prepares for an orderly behavior in their country. And I think India is working towards making all of these enablers much easier, much better, much stronger, much more robust, whether it's ease of doing business, whether it's improving our competitive edge, whether it's bringing down our logistics costs, whether it's making it easier to get approvals and less intimidating to work with the government. I think all of these are the typical needs of business which we in government are trying to address. There is an opportunity, there's a trust deficit available globally, and India is hoping to be able to fill in that opportunity, that gap in international supply chains as a trusted partner, as a partner which, through the Atmanirbhar Bharat program, the Self-Reliant India program, wishes to prepare India to work with the rest of the world on stronger terms, on more equal terms, offer India as a market opportunity, yet also look at seizing other market opportunities from a position of strength with quality products, with products which are made at competitive prices, which are affordable for people around the world. And I believe our government's commitment, while we talk of a self-reliant India, is to not close the doors to global engagement, but to rather open them wider so that India becomes a part of global interactions and global businesses more as an equal, more as a trusted partner with products and services which are high quality, which are of significant value proposition to other parts of the world, which are competitive in pricing. And we in government are committed to making it a two-way, mutually beneficial engagement. We'll make it easier to trade across borders, yet make it easier to work within India also. And therefore opening a 1.3 billion people market opportunity, both for businesses in India and the world. May the best man win.
Very well said, Minister. And the big takeaway is all about making India a reliable partner for global supply chains. And on that point, Representative Berayu mentioned about the diversification of global supply chains that the US government and US companies are looking at. What do you think are some of the lessons we can draw from the COVID disruptions to global supply chains? And what specific opportunities are there for US and Indian companies and governments to apply these lessons to their mutual benefit?
Yeah, thank you. Listening to Minister Goyal, I think he touched on something that we've seen in the Modi administration. Minister Goyal talked about predictability in the regulatory regime, and I at least have always believed that Prime Minister Modi's first term was about creating some of that regulatory certainty and the necessary reforms to make it easier to invest in India. The second term, this current term, is when hopefully we will see these gains. None of us predicted the pandemic, but the pandemic does present some of those opportunities. What what has been exposed by COVID-19 is how much of our supply chain over the past decade or two has gone to China. And, it won't all come onshore. And in fact, I think, as people talk about bringing everything back to the United States of America, the reality is much of that, some will come back to the United States for national security purposes, but much of it will look for other partner countries. And I think this is where India has a unique opportunity. Even India's pharmaceutical sector relies on China for many of the raw ingredients. And I think, India recognizes that over-reliance on, a single source is dangerous to its own national security, but also to its industry. And I think this is a real unique opportunity where we can come together, both on the pharmaceutical side, but more importantly, as we see vaccine, I'll put my doctor hat on, the rapidity with which we're, seeing vaccine development trials. India is participating in some of these trials as well. I think there's a unique opportunity for U.S. pharmaceutical companies and vaccine manufacturers to partner with India's manufacturing sector in the vaccine cycle, because the logistical challenge of, this is not for the United States just manufacturing and distributing 300 million doses of vaccine. This is for the world. How do we come up with 6 to 7 billion doses of vaccine, create the glass vials, the syringes, the workforce to distribute and inoculate the entire planet? And, again, India, I believe, has the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world, and has, historically been manufacturing vaccine for the rest of the world. I think this is a place where, India can work with the United States, not just to help us here at a price point that's accessible for the United States, but also for the rest of the world. And, this is a unique opportunity where we all have to work together, and it's not a Democratic or Republican initiative. You've seen both Democratic presidents and Republican presidents, and here within Congress, the caucus on India and Indian Americans is, if it's not the largest caucus, it's one of the largest caucuses. And, in a bipartisan way, I think there is a real desire to work with India, especially as we see, tensions with China, and the direction that China is moving. We'll continue to do business with China, but we also see the trajectory that they're headed in, and that gives us some pause here. And we see the challenges that India faces on its northern border as well. And I think it just creates an opportunity for like-minded allies that believe in free markets, that believe in competition. And competition is a good thing. It makes us better. But I do think this is a real unique moment in time where our two countries can get very close.
Thank you, Representative Breda. And as you rightly said, the opportunities starting with pharmaceuticals are immense, which can be applied across industries as well. Minister Goyal, you talked about the importance of timely and a transparent process for approvals as something that industries look to, companies look to in terms of ease of doing business. One of the most anticipated things have been the single window clearance process. Any news to share on that, sir?
Yeah, but I must tell you that's been one of the most challenging assignments that I've worked on in the last 6 years. I have been in business myself. I started a small manufacturing company, nearly 40 years ago, when I was almost a child. And I still remember the kind of difficulties we used to face, even in a small thing like getting land approved or land licenses approved in those days. Over the years, I think different levels of government have kept adding layers of approvals, permits, licenses, and the entire system has become quite a maze. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been very, very keen that we should untangle this entire maze And I'm happy to share with you, we have a whole team working along with Invest India. Invest India is all a partner with USIBC in many initiatives, working and understanding the needs of businesses in the US and across the world. They give us the necessary feedback and the information, which helps us in working towards a single window, which can go across the central government, the state government, even local bodies. And, I'll give you a simple example how I'm explaining it to my own officers. I said, look at the common application form that a student who applies to US university has to fill up. It's to 8 universities, one form, and a small supplement to each of the colleges answering an essay or giving some supplementary information. I know that because I've gone through with 2 kids working and studying in US schools over the last 6 or 7 years. Having gone through that, that's my simple basic document on which I'm trying to get my teams to work. We are understanding industry's pain points and their requirements. We are trying to create such a genuine single window, not a window behind which opens only to 10 doors behind it. It's a Herculean task. Will take some time, Mr. Gopalan, but I assure you, we are committed to making it happen. To begin with, one of the first things that on a pilot we're going to release very soon is a GIS-based land bank availability across the country, different parts of the country. We've identified in 6 states a few 100,000 hectares of land, and we are actually going to offer you a Google Earth view of particular lands which are available for industry to buy off, and then take it forward from there, so much so that my intention is a person sitting in Iceland should be able to not only locate the land he wants, but also pay for it and buy it off.
That's so good to hear. I love your analogy of the US college application, having seen it myself. And if we can get there, I think this would definitely be transformative in terms of ease of doing business. A lot of progress already made, and this could be the next S-curve. Thank you so much, and we look forward to the good news very soon, sir. Representative Bera, you made some interesting points on the partnerships between India and US in the pharmaceutical space. You rightly referred to the need for equitable vaccine access across the world and the unique role that the India vaccine industry can play. So you also, your home state is the birthplace of technology and some of the biggest technology companies across the world. And as we look at some of these opportunities in the pharmaceutical space, what do you think are some of the opportunities in the technology space, defense, aerospace, and other industries that we can learn from, deepen these partnerships?
Yeah, I think that the partnership and the opportunities are immense. If you think about, one thing, America still is the hub of research and innovation and the investments that we make both through our academic institutions, but also our private sector entrepreneurial side. I think the partnership on an academic to academic side, I think we can help India continue to build its own R&D sector, its own innovation sector. It already has a mature sector on the technology side, but we can take that one step further. And the reason why I think that area is so important is, in a wealthy country like the United States, we'll often develop products that are at a particular price point for the US markets, but those price points won't work for the rest of the world. Now, if we partner with India to make those products available to its population, but also to the rest of the world, has to now figure out how do we innovate to bring those price points down. And vaccines are a great example, but you can think about cell phone technology and other areas. And I think India's innovation is how can we mass produce these products at a lower price point? And then how can we take those products not just to the rest of the world, but also bring those products back to the United States to make them help us deal with our own challenges, the cost of healthcare and other things in the United States are a challenge for us. So I think India has an opportunity in partnership, our companies working together, that not only benefit the United States addressing some of its challenges, but as partners going into third countries. And I've used the example of solving challenges in Africa. India has a much older relationship with the African continent. There's a large diaspora in Africa, and I think the United States on aid and development ought to partner with India to think about those innovative solutions as we go into third countries and the rest of the developing world.
I think they're excellent points that I think the part about R&D is looking at the partnerships on the academic side on both sides, and the idea of jointly partnering to go after opportunities to support third countries as well. I think something for all of us to think over. The last question I pose now back to both the panelists is really on the challenge governments across the world are facing in terms of this balance of safety, protecting the lives of citizens, but also supporting livelihoods and getting economies started. And this is proving to be a very tough challenge for every government across the world. So I'd love to get your thoughts of how you think the US and India are approaching this challenge. I'll pose that question first to Representative Bera and then to Minister Goyal.
So I think it's the right question to ask, because as both of our countries, certainly grapple with widespread, the widespread virus and the number of cases that we're seeing in both countries, our first responsibility is to protect our citizens and make sure their health is protected. But we also have to grapple with the reality that the next 6, 12, maybe 24 months, we know the virus will be circulating. And at the end of the day, you have to put food on your table. You have to have a roof over your head. So we have to figure out what's the right balance. In the United States, unfortunately, politics has come into play. I think we're moving through that, and there are measures that we think everyone should be doing in terms of wearing a face covering, physical distancing when you can, and good hygiene. But as we learn more about this virus, it feels like we've been in this pandemic for several years. We're really in month 6 of the pandemic, and really month 3 or 4 of really grappling with this virus. Our doctors are learning more about how to manage the patients. Every day we're learning more science. I would hope that the world in a transparent way shares information freely, because again, this is not a challenge for one state or one country. This is a global challenge, and we should be sharing what we're learning very transparently across the world, so we're learning from each other. And I think we have to get to a point where we can manage the virus, but we also do have to resume trade and the ability to interact with one another. As much as I enjoy the virtual summit, it's not a replacement for in-person diplomacy. And I think that's incredibly important. We will figure some of that out as we move through this. We will work through it, trying to reduce risk and keep people safe. And again, I hope we do it in a collaborative way, but we also do have to keep our economies open and working, because people do have to have a livelihood. They do have to put food on the table, and they have to put a roof over their head.
Minister Goyal.
Thank you, Congressman. Those were very, very appropriate closing comments. In fact, I think the beauty about the US-India relationship is that we complement each other. We are not in competition with each other. On almost every score, the work that the United States does in different areas helps India, and we can actually become the manufacturer or the producer of a lot of the good technologies that the US comes up with to make it affordable, to make it at scale and meet the needs, growing needs of the world. I think everybody agrees that we have to balance lives and livelihoods. But as Prime Minister Modi, who today is the most popular leader, who leads a billion plus people and who trust him, who follow his directions, his instructions to the T, India has been able to actually face the pandemic much better than other parts of the world had thought India would be able to do. There were a lot of concerns that used to be expressed. How will India handle this, given the large population, the dense population, and lack of adequate facilities? But on one call of the Prime Minister, the entire nation went into lockdown. We broke the coronavirus transmission chain. We gave ourselves time to prepare to meet this challenge. So we are now self-sufficient in personal protective equipment and masks and hand sanitizers. From only 4 laboratories doing this test, we now have 1,000. From 2,500 a day, we now do 400,000 a day tests. We are self-sufficient in ventilators. I'll shortly be starting export of ventilators. So the country as a whole has rallied behind Prime Minister Modi to ensure that we protect lives so that we live another day for our livelihood. When we studied earlier pandemics, and Prime Minister Modi has done a lot of research on this, we realized that those countries who focused on saving lives in the near, medium term and long run did well in the economy. And those which focused only on the economy tended to collapse and growth went down. I think India has played a very good balancing act. We have focused first on protecting lives, second on balancing lives and livelihoods, and third, we are now unlocking the country, learning to live with the pandemic, as Congressman Bera rightly said, learning to live with it with the necessary precautions. And imagine a country of 1.3 billion people today, nobody moves out without a face cover or a mask. You won't find anybody spitting on the road, which we were always worried about for, what, centuries, if not longer. But today the country has that discipline. There is that awareness in all the people of the country, and the trust that Prime Minister Modi, who's leading from the front, literally from the on the battleground, and the country has rallied behind him. And I'm confident we will emerge victorious from this pandemic. We will ensure that the country saves lives and simultaneously promotes livelihoods. My best wishes to the India Ideas Summit. Congressman Bera, thank you very much for some very, very encouraging comments from you. You have always been a trusted friend whom we all look up to as a part of the US-India engagement. And I'm sure you will continue to support the various efforts that well-meaning organizations like USIBC are continuously engaged in to further strengthen this bond of friendship and brotherhood. My best wishes to all the panelists. My best wishes to all those who are listening in onto this webinar. Please stay safe, stay healthy, take care of your family. Thank you very much.